Thanks everybody for joining. I am just going to give it another minute and then we're just going to go ahead and get with the meeting today. And thank you again for joining. And particularly thank you those who actually join us in a meeting room in Seattle. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it to Seattle physically. So we are holding this meeting kind of virtual, but it's kind of a reverse for hybrid meeting. So I hope to see everybody in Chicago in 6 months. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sufan Wong. I'm the chair of the Pharmaceutical Science Committee. Thank you again all for joining us this morning. I know some of you is already approaching midday. I'm still just starting to wake up. So we're going to start our meeting today. I sent out the agenda before, but unfortunately for some of you who are not on the mailing list or email list, you probably didn't see that. So I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda so you know what we'll be covering. This is pretty routine for our template of our meeting agenda. Usually starts with me just giving people update and also inviting some of our members to provide some update report of activities or policy and procedure involvement they in. And then Dr. Andrew Smith is going to give us an update, who's the chair of the Drug Information Subcommittee. So he's going to give us some update on the subcommittee. And then we have some ongoing either committee involvement or projects that some of our members are carrying on. So I usually give us an update also, and then we open the floor up for the pharmacist liaison to provide us report as needed. And of course, it's always an opportunity for an open agenda at the end for others who are attending to share with us any things that they feel that we should know or anything that we should explore also. So let me just go back to the first agenda item, which is the committee administrative report. Because of the virtual nature of the meeting, so we have been using the recording to provide meeting summary report. So when I received that, I sent it out and for our committee members' approval. So I have not heard any editing or corrections that needs to be done. So I'm going to just have that, leave the floor open for anybody who might have corrections they want to do now on the report to share with us. If not, then we'll consider the meeting summary report approved. Okay, thank you. And then now I'm going to introduce some of our new PSC member. Thank you to Andrew's effort. We have 3 new members from University of Michigan. So I see some of them on the call. So if you would like to, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself. So please, if you're on the call, can you unmute yourself? I see, yes, I see your name on there. So please go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Allison Scheppers. I'm a clinical specialist here at U of M. I spent almost 4 years working on the inpatient med-onc service, and in the past year I transitioned outpatient, where I'm working with GI, GU, and thoracic malignancies. So I'm excited to get to know this group.
Thank you. And Dr. Fraga or Dr. Alenia, if you would like to unmute yourself and introduce.
Hello, my name is Dawood Elian. I'm a clinical pharmacy specialist also at University of Michigan. I work mainly with research pharmacy. I have been involved in different aspects of clinical research for the past 4 to 5 years. And it's a pleasure to be working with you guys.
Thank you and welcome. And then Dr. Fargar, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. I'm getting to know all of you. Okay, I'm checking. Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't believe I. Yep.
Looks
Okay.
like Martina might just be joining us right now.
Oh, okay. Good. I was just going to.
Sorry, I had connection issues getting onto here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Martina Fraga. I am one of our inpatient pharmacists here at the University of Michigan. I primarily work inpatient on our hematology service, and I'll be on the lymphoma committee.
Thank you. So as you see, all three of our new members are going through the final approval process of the membership, and we are so happy to have them join us. And you can see I already aligned them with some of the disease committee, and they will be serving as liaison for breast committee, lymphoma committee, EU committee. Again, thank you, welcome, and look forward to working with all of you. And last but not least is thank you, Andrew, for your recruitment efforts also. And we also have additional new members from our pharmacist trainee program, but I'm going to leave that for Andrew to introduce the new members to you. All right. I don't know if Dan is able to join us. He told me that he will be attending several meetings concurrently, so he will hop on. So for now, let me just table this, and when he joins, maybe we can ask him for some update on the drug interaction initiative. The next is Rivka has brought forth a topic that she would like to discuss on washout period for interacting drug. Rivka?
Hello. So I recently reviewed the protocol, and we have potential CYP P450 interacting drugs to exclude. So we want to exclude patients on these interacting drugs. And a patient came to the clinic and was on one of the interacting drugs that we could stop. And the question was, what would be the washout period that will be appropriate? So I kind of remember that after 4 half-life, 93% of a drug is probably eliminated. But I wasn't sure that this is a good measure, that 4 half-life is enough. Should we do 5? How is half-life correlate with actually the enzymatic effect, the induction or the inhibition of the CYP450 enzyme? So I wonder if anybody have experience, could comment, know of a recommended half-life period from protocols that they work on.
So anybody have any suggestions or experience on that you would like to share your thoughts? Andrew and I had done a pretty in-depth drug interaction intervention at one time, but it was an unusual situation because of the drug involved. So I kind of wanted to save this, or maybe Andrew can chime in later to share that experience. But if anybody else on the call, I'm certain we have a lot of people who are good clinical pharmacologists who can share their insight, or what do you guys think? So I guess Rivka's question is, should we go with 4 half-life or half-life, right?
Or 5 half-life, or do we need to think about what happens to the enzyme? So I wish that Dan was on the call, because I know that he works on drug interactions at all.
Right, exactly. So I hope he will get on the call at some point, yes.
Yes, so maybe we will, I can always ask him after the meeting, but I see that Rena Kraft always thought 5 half-life, and that was my memory too. I just can't find it anywhere. Anybody else, do you remember specific protocol that lists the number of half-life?
Well, I don't see any hand raising, or if you have any idea or opinion, don't hesitate to unmute and share. And then I see on the chat that Raina said 5 half-life is the norm. And I would tend to agree. On the safe side, I think going with 5 half-life is a good idea for that. However, I do want to share that oftentimes you're right. You have to look at the enzyme and if there's any secondary effect also, and how it truly impacts clinically. You also have to look at is the level or the severity of the interaction. Is it a strong inhibitors or weak inhibitors, etc. I think all those I would also recommend to take into consideration as you.
Yes.
Yeah, because you don't want to hold off the patient too long, right? To be able to enroll on a protocol, etc.
Exactly. And in my protocol, it's only SWOG or moderate specific CYP inhibitors. So we already narrowed down the CYP interactions. But we had an interacting drug. It happened to be, I believe, Prozac. The patient could go off, and I didn't know exactly for how long. 5 half-lives would be safe. That's what we did. But then I wasn't sure. So we stopped the drug, but what's with the enzyme? Is the enzyme still inhibited? So I think that I will have a resident this summer, and I probably give that resident project to research it a little further, and I will talk with them maybe offline. But I thank you. So I feel that this is an issue that is not clear-cut. Nobody have a very clear-cut answer. Require more research, and I will ask them maybe to assist me. And,
Rivka, thank you for bringing this. I mean, I think what Andrew and I did before is really on a isolated case basis, but certainly it was a huge learning experience and we resolved that. It hasn't popped up again, but I'm glad you bring that up because of the nature of your current position. Your increase certainly tells me that it's happening more often than what we are being asked to get involved in. And I also wonder if this may be something that we should provide some recommendation to put in some policy. Maybe even the policy 38 is one to consider. Let's put our head together after the meeting and work on this and see if we can put forth some recommendation. At least a more standard one, but allow people to spring from there for individual cases also will be helpful. I can see that occurring more and more often now with the utility of oral medication in a more frequent manner.
So thank you for agreeing to researching it and working on it. And I want to also mention one thing that I looked in COG pharmacy committee documents, and they do have a table for washout for monoclonal antibodies, and that was only 3 half-lives. And because monoclonal antibodies, the duration is so long. So that is a whole even different ballgame.
Right.
And they have a table with specific drugs. But I think that we could work on just this CYP interactions as a start. And I think that this is something that is real, it's happening, and people may need guidance. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this, because I agree. I mean, we have done some work on including some standard language to put in the section 3 and 7 for the protocol, but I don't think we get to very specific in terms of more specific direction for what to do after identifying a drug interaction. So perhaps it's time that we need to dive into it deeper to come up with a more in-depth recommendation also. It's not going to be easy, but we'll definitely try, right? But thank you. I will definitely put the group together, and then we can work on that, and definitely include Dan in that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this is just a report to let everybody know that this past year we have done some policy or manual review and update. So Matt was very helpful in reviewing the ORP manual chapter 6, which is to do with drug ordering, and he updated quite a few sites and forms and etc. So that was very helpful. And then of course, we have done a lot of work on policy 38 dosing principles. And so later on, I am sharing a few slides with everybody to go into that in more detail. And then we also updated the policy 25 drug ordering, which come at a good time because I have to say I cheated and I used a lot of the update that Matt provided in the ORP manual to update the link and websites and stuff like that as well. It's a fairly short policy, but it's just to make sure all the links are updated. And so that's what we have accomplished this past year. So from here, I just wanted to share with you some updates that we have done on policy number 38, which is a dosing principle. So essentially, anytime we have policy, our purpose is really to promote consistency among all the investigator sites, particularly very pertinent in a group such as SWOG, when we have so many different investigated from various settings also, and their resource and support are very different. And in addition to that, oftentimes we do feel that the more we know, the more we don't know. So that's the reason why we end up doing some modifications of the policy 38. So the latest revision of that is in October 2021. And actually, as I was reviewing, I already identified a couple of areas that we need to do an update, essentially just the wording of it. So this is a layout of the section 38. So you have the background, initial dosing, dose rounding, dose modification, during treatment. And then the second section of the policy has to do with the estimation of the creatine clearance. So the wording in the red font in the areas that we have done for modification. So the first one is section 1.2 for initial dosing. We make two changes. I apologize that I forgot to put in for the first one. We make some modification of language, which is typically our dosing is based on body surface area or protocol specific body weight. And our recommendation is the dose rounding should be within 5%. However, with recent frequent occurrence of drug shortage and the intention of minimizing drug wastage, a group of us has discussed this and also looking at additional guidelines outside of SWOG. And so we decided to extend this, the maximum limit to 10%, particularly when it has to do with accommodating for the size of the vial that the drug comes in. And this is the intent to manage the drug shortage issue and to minimize the wastage of drug vials. So that's the language change, the first one. And of course, this is the next few bullet point is really leading to why we have additional modification of the second issue in this section. As we know, calculation of body surface area is based on actual body weight. And in the policy, our recommendation is the actual body weight is more than twice the ideal body weight. We asked the PI at the site to determine if patients should be enrolled in a clinical trial. So in order to determine for the actual body weight fitting in this criteria of more than twice the ideal body weight, of course, one has to calculate the ideal body weight. So as I'm sure many of you are familiar with the formula that is being used, it differs slightly between male and female. However, it's a base weight plus 2.3 kilo times the number of inches above 5 feet or 60 inches. So interestingly, within the last 2 years, a question came is what to do with people who are shorter than 60 inches in height. Scratch my head, never remember that I've learned that. Can you mute your line, please? So never remember that we have been taught about what to do with people that are shorter than 60 inches. And it's not necessary to do the minus as a below 60 inches. That's not the way to work. Holly, can you mute your line, please? So what we have done is actually went into the literature and we find an article that is in 2005. Of course, I didn't do that on my own. I actually, one of the pharmacokinetic professor at the university that I was at to help me with that. So you can imagine that based on the age of this manuscript, they're not that much information around. So we find this model basically using the patient's gender, height, and body weight to predict a parameter called fat-free mass. And then a secondary work on that is using the predicted fat-free mass and the patient's BMI. One can come up with an ideal body weight. So the calculation is not simple. So, but at least we have something to recommend and we have tested out and it seems to work. So consequence to that, I was able to work with Angela Smith from the Stat Center in Seattle to update the calculator, the ideal body weight calculator that is on the Two of the Trade site. So later on, I will be able to share with you how you can access that.
Do you know how to fix how I can fix this audio?
I'm sorry? Oh, you. Okay. Holly, you are muted right now from my screen. Okay, so then the second area that we change is just a clarification of language, which is section 1.3 and has to do with modification during treatment. So the dose modifications, currently the recommendation is should be based on percentage escalation or reduction as indicated in the protocol. We recommend that the patient be weighed prior to the start of a new cycle of treatment. And the dose recalculation should only occur if the patient's weight has changed of 10%, more than 10% or more. So I think the original wording that we used on the protocol was a little confusing for a lot of the users. So we received the feedback from the auditors, and then with the input also, we change it to more weight gain or weight loss dose and weight. So I actually presented this at the ORP meeting yesterday, and I asked them to use this and then let us know if it continues to be not clear, and then we'll continue to work on that. Hopefully this works. All right, the next section is the section 2.2. So this has to do with calculating creatine clearance procedure. And what we have is, because this particular equation also involves calculation ideal body weight. So as you see from this Cock-Off and Golf formula, the weight in kilo is patient's weight, but we are asking for an implementation of an upper limit of 140% of ideal body weight. That means that we ask users to calculate the ideal body weight and then look at the patient's actual body weight and see if it's more than 140% of the ideal body weight. And if so, then they cap the patient's body weight that they use in this equation to that 140% of ideal body weight. So you can see ideal body weight is part of the calculation prior to inserting the value into the Kirchhoff-Gault. So the second parameter is the serum creatinine. It used to be at 0.8. So this is not a recent change, but it was changed before to lower that to 0.7. And this is primarily in alignment with many of the other organizational guidelines. And in addition to that, we also recognize that there are more and more EMR being used for calculation. So consequent to that, we felt that there's a need for us to better align with other organization guidelines as well. So that's the reason for the drop. And we did look at the literature and also many of our members' institutional guideline, and we all felt comfortable dropping it from 0.8 to 0.7. And it should not overestimate the creatine clearance. And part of the reason is because now we have a set maximum creatine clearance at 125 ml per minute. So the policy did stated that, or our policy 38 did stated that the site-based EMR setting can be used if needed. But I always ask people who that we're sharing the information with, that it's not a bad idea to just double check and see how the setting or the formula are used to make sure that, because the formula usually is not necessarily only target a patient with cancer, but is a more general patient population. So with that, I think it really needs to be take a look at to make sure that it doesn't deviate too much from the recommendation in the oncology population. But again, this is not a straightforward calculation also. So what we have done is I asked Angela to work with the tool of trade calculator to update the information, as well as use with that previous formulation to incorporate the situation where if a patient come in with a less than 5 feet in height, that this calculator will also take all those into the algorithm to provide the accurate ideal body weight also for that. So those are basically the changes that we have made in policy 38. So the next slide for me, just to kind of give you a refresher on how you can get to the tool of the trade site. So if you access the SWOG homepage, so some of our new members, you may not have that access yet, but as soon as your membership are finalized, then you'll be able to access it using your CTEP registration, sign in. So if you go into the homepage, you would see that on the header bars, there is one called clinical trials. If you click on that, it will take you to this site, and then if you look at the box on the left, you will see that there is a CRA workbench. So if you click on the CRA workbench, it will take you to another sign-in site to log in. And again, you enter the same CTEP credentials that you use to log into the SWOG homepage. Same thing. And then after you enter your username and password, you click I agree and log on. And then it will take you to this page, the CRA workbench page. And if you look to the left, you can see that there's a tools of the tray. So if you click on that, you will find a list of tools that are available. So pertaining to policy 38, there are 3 calculators that is related to that. Is the BSA calculator, the creatine clearance calculator, and then last but not least, the ideal body weight formula and calculator. So all this calculator are built in that one can just enter the patient's measured value directly onto the calculator, and then the calculator will go through the different algorithm to provide the output, which is the BSA, the calculator, the creatine clearance, and the ideal body weight for you. So this is what I have for policy 38. Any questions, suggestions, concerns? And I also want to thank you for those of you who are involved in all this revision and working through the process with us. And I welcome any suggestions that you may have. So a question come is the creatine clearance is for all disease states. I presume that all disease states will be all cancer type, and the answer will be yes. This is intended for patients with cancer. Oh, not at all. Don't feel bad. I just want to clarify to make sure I answer the questions correctly. Thank you, Reina. All right. So please feel free to type in your question, and even if I am now moving on to the next item, but we can always come back and address your questions also. So the next thing that I also wanted to bring it to the membership's attention is really pertain to all of us. So some of you may know that in fall of last year, CTAP from NCI came out with a policy called Advanced Practice Providers, APPS, writing study agent orders. So this is implemented in the CTAP handbook of the investigator handbook regarding ability of qualified APPS to place study agent orders, including IND agents and standard of care agents in the protocol without a physician code signature. So as you can see, what defines qualified APPS is they must be registered in the NCI registration and credentialing roster as a non-physician investigator, which I think, which if you are a PSC member of our committee, you will have that because that is a requirement. And be added to the site delegation of task logs for each of the investigator site as an IND prescribing to the tasks of that, if that's required. So, and then the site clinical investigator must sign this DTLs, which is the delegation of task log for this qualified APPS to conduct this new task. So those are some of the qualification and documentation process of that to assign somebody as a qualified APPS. Who can be screened as a qualified APPS? They include nurse practitioner, physician assistants, clinical nurse specialists, advanced degree nurses, and pharmacists who are licensed and qualified per institutional policy, local and state laws and regulations, including requirements as mandated for international sites. I think the last one is a little interesting for us that I can think of. And I understand that the advanced practitioner should sign for hematology oncology, and this is defined from that organization. And then the NCI trials cover under this policy include those in the DCP, so it's preventive trial, as well as the treatment trial. That's essentially what this sentence means. So in addition to that, how about for the site? So this some of the listings. Sites must have an institution policy that qualifies APPS. So credentialing policies process for APPS to write study agent order that are consistent with their local and state laws and regulations. statement that a qualified physician investigator is responsible for all trial-related medical decisions, including providing oversight of the APPS in their capacity of writing study drug orders. And then institutional policy can be stored in the site regulatory files and be available for review. And this review will obviously include auditing as well. And then the site will need to ensure that the APP is qualified to write study drug agents as a non-physician providers and register. So they will also be confirming that, and the renew, maintain the registration annually. And many of us remember we have to do that, right? And the RCL verifies the professional licensing, including APPS, during the annual registration process. And the site CI will identify APPS qualified to write study agent orders on site DTLs where required, and the site DTL administrator, all the CI, the clinical investigator will need to add the IND prescribing task for the non-physician provider, and the CI must sign this task. So this is really a description of documentation and process. So my question is, I think pharmacists in a little unique perspective, as we already have been self-covering ourselves. I think we know that in recent years, licensed pharmacists have evolved to include the ability to prescribe medications, adjust and monitor drug therapy, perform patient assessment and additional per institutional policy most of the time, as well as complying with the state laws as well. We know there are 7 states in the country that allow pharmacists to qualify for what we call an expanded prescribing authority, which I'll go into it a little bit more detail. And now, even for that expanded prescribing authority, 4 out of the 7 states as listed on the slide, actually the individual has to go and apply for an advanced licensing in order for them to qualify for the expanded prescribing authority. On the other hand, the 3 other states, Florida, Idaho, and Oregon, they don't require people to go and apply for new licensing. And they have additional limitation, but each of the states also has different regulations also. Now, on the other hand, to complicate the matter is because of COVID, many of us know that the roles and responsibility of all pharmacists in all states continue changing in terms of ability to dispense medications without prescription also by the HHS. So it is not as simple from my perspective as what we would like, because I think the requirement and the licensing between nursing and pharmacy are a bit different. So let me also share with you, since this so differ among states, so some of you may not be as familiar with what's happening at all the states in the country also. So let's start with just looking at, in general, for all 50-some states, is the limited prescribing in all US states. So pharmacists in all states can prescribe and administer vaccine. We know that. So the growing number of states are allowing licensed pharmacists to prescribe a small number of medications, such as birth control, naloxone, tobacco cessation products, preventive HIV medications, and travel medicine. So this essentially outline that and this is not universal among all 50-some states also. So you can see that there are like 12 allow pharmacists to do this and different products, etc. So this is not as straightforward as it is. So you would think that, okay, what about the expanded prescribing, the 7 selected states? So actually for those 7 states, first of all the pharmacists under a collaborative agreement with physicians. First, that's the first requirement. And then the pharmacist in 7 states has been given more authority than the limited prescribing status to prescribe additional medication or as well as to treat minor conditions. So again, 7 states, and I put an asterisk for the 4 states that require credentialing requirement on licensing. That means you actually have to go to the state board and apply for an I call it the upgraded licensing. And this next 2 slides actually also allowed me to share with you, even among those who require special licensing or not requiring special licensing, differs in what they can do. So you can see in California, they just really emphasize on is what actions the pharmacist can do, specific medications. So patients can perform patient assessment, order and interpret drug tests, refer patients to other providers, may initiate, adjust, and discontinue drug therapy upon referral from a patient's treating prescriber under protocol. And then in Montana, it's all drug therapy management, including controlled substances under protocol. New Mexico, same thing, medications for chronic and non-chronic condition. North Carolina is also all drug therapy management. So this is a little bit more simplified statement than what California is, separating into different bullet points on that. But you can see that the spectrum of the prescribing of the drug therapy is pretty broad. Now in Florida, Idaho, and Oregon, you can see Florida and Idaho, they are very specific in medication for certain indications and written protocols for minor diseases or chronic illness, so that people have to go work under those written protocols. And in Idaho, they separate by acute conditions, devices, emergency medicine, travel medicines, etc. And then in Oregon, they really go with the state formulary for devices and supplies and medications on protocol compendium. So I think with that, I hope I share some of the background information that I thought when I look into this and say, how does it work for pharmacists to be impacted by this NCI policy? To me, I mean, of course, that is always something that good progress to acknowledge non-physician, and in addition to that, to really promote team care, and as well as really providing hopefully a more efficient system also. But I think, I don't know how it works for pharmacy, because first of all, one has to look at the current advanced provider prescribing authority criteria, what the interpretations are, and how does it cover not approved medications, but also potentially investigational drug or even approved study drugs. And the variation in the current practice responsibility and authorities among the state also really need to take a look at, because that as SWOG, that also means that we cannot really necessarily create a uniform policy to allow pharmacists in all the different states to support or to contribute in the same manner. And then, of course, many of our extended, I call that practice, is usually heavily influenced by the collaborative agreement with physicians. I'm going to leave the last bullet point and not talk about it, but I do want to hear from you what your thoughts are on this matter. And I also did a kind of spot survey, as I call that, for some of our members in major medical center or health system, and asked what their knowledge of this policy and what their institution are planning to do, or their directors are planning to do. When I say directors, the pharmacist director, or if they've been approached by the research office for their involvement also. And I would say that pretty universally, it seems like none of the people that I've talked to have been asked to engage in this process. So with that, I want to open up the floor and get some feedback from you guys. Rena, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Yes.
Didn't want to accidentally talk over somebody else. And
No, thank you for raising your hand.
it's pronounced Renee. Nobody ever gets it. Don't.
Sorry, Renee. And Renee, which institution are you from?
So I'm at St. Joseph Mercy in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So I know when we've talked about this within our group about providing the APP providers, that's redundant, providing the APP's ability to sign, I've asked about a pharmacist being able to do this as well. And I know at this point for our group, they've continued to say that it would just, be PAs and MPs, that pharmacy wouldn't be included. I think a lot of the struggle for our site would be to have more of an institutional policy for this.
Right.
Our policy has always been that only physicians can sign or modify chemotherapy orders. So I think that's the biggest barrier before we could even move to kind of get pharmacists on board with this.
Yeah. Do you think your state law would also create a challenge?
I think I would have to look into that a little bit more. And some of Allison and some of our other Michigan folks on here could probably chime in as well. I know we've always had the ability to adjust orders in that type of scenario, but starting, either a new order, and typically for our site, even with the APPs, when we move them onto this, it's always been that the physician still needs to initiate a plan, then do any modifications that the APP then would be able to sign any subsequent orders, for cycles that don't have any changes. So, for that, and I think really for the pharmacists, I think it would come in handy, especially with some of the dose modifications, just to make sure that they're put in place correctly.
Right.
In EMR, that's often where I see mistakes happen.
Yes.
That they try to enter something and don't quite figure out how to do it. We use Epic, so sometimes you'll see pulling in the wrong lab values or weights, depending on what study parameter is, if you can adjust and that type of thing. Having a pharmacist be able to go ahead and make those corrections and sign, I think would be a benefit to most groups, because then you're not having to track down a higher level provider those orders signed.
And do you have a internal QA system to make sure that to minimize the chance of error being made? I mean, not even just dosing error, but it can be a protocol issue type of thing.
Yeah, so it's not as an official group, but we do have a team that works on our research builds, and so I'm eager to hear the topic on epic builds. So a team that's comprised of myself, the pharmacist, and some nurses that work on submitting requests for our epic builds and then validating them to make sure that they're built correctly. Our research nurses are always reviewing the orders, and then we have pharmacists as we're dispensing that are reviewing orders based on how they're built. So the first step is trying to make sure that our epic build is completely possible and contains all the information that anybody would need to make sure that those doses are correct and that the right values are being used.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for Renee. Anybody else? Anybody from other systems that that you can share with us what your institutions are doing, or have they start talking about it at all? All right. So I hope I bring some awareness to this group here, and that, and maybe do some research within your site. And I would love to hear from you from different sites, in addition to University of Michigan, to see what the plans are, etc. For me, I think the most important thing is to make sure that we have a quality assurance set up to make sure that everybody is able to do this. I think it's a good policy, and I'm glad that we're doing that. But of course, anything that is new, we should make sure that the quality control is there as well. And that's kind of my aspect, and to make sure that we are helping to prepare our pharmacist colleague to be ready for this new initiative also. So perhaps we can think about if there anything educational that we can do, perhaps in the future for that. Thank you for your attention on this. So I'm going to move on to the next items. So this is a very short report items, and again, I pull Andrew involved into this with me also, and this has to do with a email that I received from an outside organization or person who's in charge from a different cooperative group, that they ask what is the policy at SWOG, because apparently there's a report by some site pharmacists that they receive a warning to say that if that continues, they can enter into a protocol violation problem. And the issue is that apparently from an electronic platform for investigational drug handling platform, when people prepare for site auditing, they usually print out hard copies of the DARF form where they use to do drug monitoring or handling. And the form that is being printed out is usually the latest version. However, some of those entries are done with the previous version of the DARF. And so they were informed that it will be a protocol violation if that doesn't get corrected. The problem is that the person who is printing on the form has no control of that. It's the electronic platform that is programmed in that way. And therefore, I think people were just trying to spread the word, and also to find out from all the different study groups to see if indeed that is the policy implemented in each of the group. So I actually went to our auditing team, and they said that no, they do not want site if the DARF revision date is not quote unquote current. What I mean current is aligned with the entry of the drug dispensing record. So I brought the message back, and now we are probably going to have all the co-op group as well as HOPA's IDS group representation to talk about this and see if we can come up with some joint statement so that we make it very clear that that should not be a protocol violation. So I just wanted to share with all of you what came to us, and how we have managed it and what we have discovered. Just in the event if you at the site are also getting a warning of such, then unfortunately I was not able to confirm where this person is coming from that made that statement. But it doesn't seem like any of the cooperative group has that policy or so in the event if you hear that, do send an email to me and let me know, and perhaps also find out where the individual is from. Maybe we can do a better job in communication and eliminate that issues also. Matt is not able to join us for this meeting because of personal issues, not issues, but it's a good issue. It's a college tour. So because of that, maybe at the next meeting, I hope I can ask him to update us in terms of an additional electronic IDS management platform that NCI is working on, and how is that going to potentially impact practice and the existing system as well. So I'm going to leave the juice up to him for the next meeting. But this is just something that I wanted to share to bring awareness. Okay, so finally, let's venture into the second portion of the PSC and the DI subcommittee joint meeting agenda. So Andrew, take it over.
Hey there, thank you, Sufan. So for those of you who haven't met, I'm Andrew Smith. I'm a research pharmacist at the University of Michigan. I first became involved with the Drug Info Committee as a resident 2 years ago and helped write drug info sections. And then when I transitioned off of residency, Sufan kindly asked me to help with this committee. So I'm about 9 months into this. So still learning and still getting my bearings, and I appreciate everyone's help. So just a few quick slides, if we could advance, please, Sufan. Thank you. I distinctly remember at the October meeting saying that things were quiet and there weren't many requests. And then by the end of that day, I had a few in my inbox. So since October, we've had a number of requests, 14 in total, a variety of new requests and updated requests. And everyone has been very helpful. I really like to thank our writers, primarily our learners, and then our reviewers. They've all been very, very helpful and very timely in meeting deadlines. So I'm very appreciative for all of their work working through these sections. There are a few complicated ones as well. So for example, the CAR T therapies, Sufan and Holly Chan spent a lot of time working through that and synthesizing a lot of information for the three CAR T cell therapies to summarize in a very concise manner. So it's a kind of a unique and a heavy lift. Thank you to all who helped with that. Next slide, please. Just a few quick points about the Sharepoint website. So as a reminder, we're using the Sharepoint website to store our documents and to help communicate between reviewers and writers and to serve as a resource. The primary reason is that some institutions may not allow documents to be shared through email. This provides a central source for our documents. A new thing in the top bar, a new section has been added where there's a library of current drug sections. This includes both investigational sections and commercial sections. So if you have a question about which section to use or need to reference a section, that can be accessed there. And we've also added a spreadsheet to track our workload and any queries. So if any reviewers or liaisons receive any inquiries, it'd be very helpful to kind of log that and describe the amount of time spent so you can track metrics. Sufan, do you want to jump in?
Andrew, Dan just put on the chat. He's able to come in for about 15 minutes. If it's okay, I hope you don't mind if I ask you to pause so that you can give us an update.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Then you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And
can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Sorry to have to just hop in here real quick. I'm between other meetings, but so I want to give updates on the drug interactions and the digital engagement committee. So the drug interactions tool that we developed, that we completed a pilot study, we had an ongoing phase 2 study. We weren't able to enroll enough ORP and get enough patients to ever complete that study. So that study was discontinued, and we're still looking for an otherwise ongoing SWOG study that would benefit from using our tool in some kind of a like embedded clinical trial type approach. So at one point there was a flibanserin study that was going to use our tool. So we're looking for something else that is using a drug or class of drugs that has significant drug interactions where we might be able to embed our tool maybe in half the sites or a subset of sites and see if our tool helps with drug interaction screening. So if you guys are liaisons to any other committees and see a clinical trial that is being developed that's using a drug that you know has lots of drug interactions, definitely let me know because we'd love to embed that. The digital...
Ben, just
yeah.
a question. The agent has to be an FDA approved agent?
It would be easier if it was, but when we developed the tool, we did talk to the company about being able to incorporate information from non-FDA approved drugs, and they said that was possible. So if we had sort of the perfect study, I mean, that might be a really nice use case because that can't be screened for otherwise. So yeah, if there was a non-FDA approved drug and we knew that it had severe drug interaction or many drug interaction concerns, that might be a really nice use case to actually do a study in. So I think it could be either. Thank you. So from the Digital Engagement Committee, there was a presentation by a group that's using artificial intelligence to predict which drugs will work best. There was a little bit of talk about the survey committee. I think the most interesting thing is that there's funds for the Digital Engagement Committee to work with AstraZeneca to conduct at least one, perhaps two clinical trials of some kind of digital tool. So there are 4 proposals that are currently under consideration. One is an Aura ring that you put on your finger that someone wants to use to find early indicators of cytokine storm from a class of chemotherapy. Another is our iPhone app to detect CIPN using physical functional assessments. A third proposal was using a tool that allows patients to mass text their support network updates about their cancer. I don't remember what the name of that tool was. And a fourth was about an AI tool that would predict when and which side effects a patient might experience and prepare them to talk with their clinicians about prophylaxis or management of those. So those are the 4 concepts that are still under consideration. I don't think anything directly relevant to PharmSci, although I'll let you guys know. There's also some stuff going on in terms of developing a social media kit for different clinical trials that are approved. So that would be helping the PI out with generating sort of tweets and patient-specific or patient-facing information to help engage patients and engage clinicians. So that's what's going on in digital engagement. I have a couple minutes left. I'm happy to sort of answer any questions about either drug interactions or digital engagement.
So then Rivka has actually brought to the committee a question regarding the washout period for drug interaction. Rivka, do you want to summarize your the comment and the event?
Yes. So I recently had a patient enrolled on a protocol. He had a drug that was a CYP450 interacting drug, and it was we were going to exclude the patient, but then we could discontinue the interacting drug. And the question was, how many half-lives do we need to wait? And is half-life really the correct measure to do? So first, is it 4 half-lives or 5 half-lives? And also, let's say that the drug is now out of the system. Is the CYP inhibition or CYP induction still occurring? What is the timeline for the CYP induction or inhibition? And I wonder if you have any comments about this issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm any more of an expert on drug interactions than the rest of the pharmacists in this group. I would say that inhibition, unless it's irreversible inhibition, is thought to end pretty much as soon as the drug is out of the system. So I would say 4 or 5 half-lives. If it's
Okay.
induction lasts longer because you're actually producing more of the enzyme. So that you actually have to think about what is the half-life of the enzyme that's being produced. And I don't know how much we know about the time course of that. I'm sure there's studies out there about the time course of the discontinuation of induction. So induction certainly would last longer. If you have an irreversible inhibitor, then you are dependent on how long it takes for the enzyme to be replenished in the system. And I don't know that much about that either. So it sort of depends on the mechanism of interaction, whether it's inhibition or induction. And I would think that there's data out there for any of them, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, so it will definitely require a little bit more looking into the behaviors of the enzymes once you inhibit or induce them and how long this effect takes. So thank you. That's helpful then. So we know that it's not just a matter of half-life.
Certainly not for induction or irreversible inhibition. If it's a standard competitive inhibition, then I would say 5 half-lives are pretty safe.
Okay, thank you.
So then, considering the complexity of this issue, do you think it's even remotely possible for us to put together some standard or generalized, I should say not standard, that's not a good choice of word, like a more generalized recommendation to guide people to think this through? Because currently our drug interaction language is just to talk about, well, consider discontinue or but it's really not extremely helpful for people to truly use that to take a clinical action. And that's what how we wrap up this topic is certainly something that is becoming more and more pertinent. So we're thinking of, is there anything additional that we as a PSC can support SWOG in this area also? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that you could have general guidelines that say if it's a competitive inhibition, 5 half-lives, if it's induction, you know, whatever we find in the literature. I'm not sure if there's different lengths of induction for different enzymes or different inducers. I think we'd have to do a little bit more work, but I think even if we put those guidelines out there, they're gonna have to come back to us and say, what does 5 half-lives mean? You know, can you just tell us the answer? So at the end of the day, it might just be contact the Pharmaceutical Sciences Committee and we'll give you guidance on your specific drug or protocol or the specific patient that's trying to be enrolled.
Okay, so so just to let you know, our thought is also maybe to have a group kind of put our heads together and think about what can be something appropriate that we can add to the current drug interaction language that we have in section 3 and 7 to better guide. The key is that, to me, is I completely agree with you, but it's a matter of helping people to raise their awareness to ask questions and not to assume.
I agree. That's a good plan. I'd be happy to be involved.
Okay, fantastic. Rivka, you're in.
Great,
Rivka,
thank you.
I'll walk to your office and we can work it out.
You'll have to work to my home though.
Well, you guys have a lot more colleagues at University of Michigan on the PSC now. So, but I'm so happy and welcome all. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Dan. Really appreciate that. All right. Andrew.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I appreciate it.
Of course. So one more point about the Sharepoint. When we have a writer and a reviewer working on a drug section and edits are made in the Sharepoint, please just send an email to the writer. There's not an automatic notification system through Sharepoint, so that writer may not know if comments were added. So it might be good to just send an email saying that you completed your review and left any comments there. Next slide, please. So again, I just want to recognize all of the help that we've received over the past 6 months. The majority of the sections have been written by our learners who have been very helpful. So that includes Vivian, Jessica, and Caitlin. Vivian is the PGY2 Investigational Drug and Research Resident at Johns Hopkins, and Caitlin is the PGY2 resident here at University of Michigan. And then Jessica is the Chapman Amgen Oncology Fellow. Again, thank you for all of their work. They'll be transitioning off as their programs wrap up this summer. So we wish them all the best as they move on to their next endeavors. And it also means that we'll be getting a new class of learners this summer. We'd also like,
if I may, just make a clarification, just so to make sure, Jessica Pham, who is the Amgen Oncology Fellow, we just want to make sure to make a disclaimer that we do not involve Jessica in writing any drugs that is competitive drugs to Amgen and
yes.
Amgen products also.
Yes, thank you for that distinction. Yes, we always make a point of making sure that there's no conflicts there.
Right.
We've noticed over the past year, there's been a number of standalone PGY2 investigational drug and research programs pop up. So we would be happy to include those residents. I really think this is a good learning opportunity. I really appreciated it as a resident. So if any of you are at an institution where you have a new PGY2 program and you would like to involve the resident, please let me know and we can have those conversations and get the ball rolling. And again, as we have the new learners coming on and the new committee members, we'll plan to have at least 2 training sessions this spring and summer to go over how to write a section and how to review it and some considerations. So I'll be in touch about those.
Andrew, may I also just supplement on the news of we are so grateful that Andrew stayed with us, and of course he's taking a leadership role. And actually, I'm also very happy to report that Michelle, who is the other graduate of the other program, she did not stay at Johns Hopkins. However, she landed a job at Wisconsin, and she's in the process of becoming a member as well. So, I'm just so thrilled. I just wanted to share. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Michelle has helped with a lot of sections as well, so I definitely would like to recognize her as well. And next slide, please. And then just a quick kind of appears as common sense, but just kind of something to keep in the back of our minds. It's easy to kind of get in the weeds and overlooked. So in this fall, we were working on an update to a drug info section. The original version was written when the agent was still investigational. So we received the update and we received an updated IB, and we were working through updating the AE section. And in the IB that we were given, the manufacturer only provided treatment emergent adverse events. So only those events that are AEs that were observed during therapy with no causality described in the IB. And that's all that we really had to work with. And that's what we used to characterize the AE section in the drug info section. But when this went to the manufacturer, there was some pushback in that they didn't want us to include certain AEs because there wasn't the causality wasn't established. But again, at the time, that's all that we had. But in the interim, the drug had been FDA approved. So in that case, we're able to use the package insert as the primary information for AEs and kind of step around this. But it's kind of led to a discussion where if we're presented with the opportunity where we have both treatment emergent and treatment related information, such as like in an IB, we would like to default to using the treatment related AEs. And then if we have a package insert, that could also be used as a primary resource. However, if we're ever in a situation where we don't have that and we just have an IB with treatment emergent data, it might be worthwhile to reach out to the manufacturer to see if they have any supplemental information. So again, it seems kind of straightforward on the surface, but just a reminder we should be trying to pool treatment related AE info whenever possible. So I believe that's all the info I had in my section. Fairly brief. Any questions? Or
anybody has a question or comments about particularly this last item that Andrew brought to our attention? So I also feel that if that is the occasion where we only treatment emergent ADR, I feel that it's also important to clarify that as we put it in section 3 of the protocol, because protocol is a working document for the site investigators. So from my perspective, I think it's important for them to know of the information so that they can also use it wisely in as they're running the protocol also.
So I agree that using treatment related is the way that we should go if it's available, and if it's treatment emergent, to at least indicate it once you are filling that section. So I agree with Andrew's approach.
Mm-hmm. But Andrew, do you get the same vibe that it seems like we may see more and more often that treatment in emergent ADRs are going to be included rather than treatment related AE or drug related, specific drug related AEs? It's
just from what I've kind of seen in research pharmacy, I think most IBs kind of have both or will make a distinction. So I'm kind of surprised when I saw this particular IB where they didn't make that distinction that the IE was potentially related to the agent. So I would like to hope that we stick with reporting treatment related and that's the standard. But I'm hoping this was just like a one-off and not necessarily a theme that's going to be emerging.
Yeah, and I think we also need to pay attention as we're reading the AE2. Make sure you look at the heading or whatever footnote to make sure you know what the IB is reporting, because it was kind of surprise finding also for us because that's not what we are used to seeing. All right, any comments or suggestions from others on the call? All right, so thank you, Andrew.
Thank you all.
Okay, so the remainder of the agenda, we have Jane Rogers from MD Anderson. She has been working with the GI committee on setting up some beacon standardized order set update. I was able to speak with her briefly before the meeting, and she said that there was no update to report. And I think we had received a report from Dan already for the Digital Engagement Committee. So now we're getting close to the end of the meeting. So pharmacist liaison reports. I just wanted to share with you the current pharmacist liaison assignment list. And then after that, I would open it up. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do that. I think I attached it to the email that I sent to the members, and I failed to do that. So if anybody has anything to share, why don't we go ahead and do that while I see what I can do to pull out. This screen is a little confusing for me. I'm not used to using this software, so hold on. All right, let me see if I can find that. If not, I would share that essentially, I think we are in much better shape than before with our, okay, I'm not even going to try because I'm not very good.
Stefan, this is Joyce. I can share the list if you want me to.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My screen just looks, and I'm just not very good in managing urgent things. When it comes to technology, I freak out. Can you share, or do I have to allow you? Oh, excellent. Okay. Thank you, Joy.
Can you see it?
Yes,
okay,
I
perfect.
can. Thank you. So this is our updated pharmacist liaison assignment. Of course, with our 3 new members from Michigan, and we were able to have most of the committee staff with 2 liaisons now, except the G committee. So we hope that we will be able to find someone to fill that. And then we'll be fully complemented. And let me know if I have not placed you at the right committee of your choice also, so that I can also work with others to maybe shift the assignments around if necessary. All right, thank you, Joyce. So with that, I will just open the floor for people to, if you have anything that you learned from your disease committee, to bring it up for discussion or inform us of anything to anticipate, as well as any open agenda item.
Stefan, I do have an open agenda item. I have kind of question for the committee, because recently we received this S1900E protocol revision or amendment, and in the drug sections has this like interesting language, and I never seen it before, and it's basically saying that due to the drug shortage or mitigate the drug wastage, SWOG recommends to instruct the patient to bring back the original bottle, and then pharmacy count the pill and sort of redispense or give it back to the patient for the subsequent cycle. I never really seen that before. I wonder if our committee was consulted and we're aware of this process. And I can share the screen with that language.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, because I think that was a little bit strange to me. Let me see here. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so I highlighted the section and basically, yeah, they were saying, to instruct the patient to use the open bottle first, and pharmacy will count the pill, but then in here it says the site should provide the excess tablet in the original bottle and back to the study participant after performing the pill count. Yeah, I'm curious to see if any site is aware of this or has been changed that practice or actually practice this way. Our site, I mean, I think in California is not allowed to redispense to patients, and even like just give it back to them without really redispensing, or which I mean like not re-putting a new label or anything. I think it creates a lot of confusion because that will be kind of partial quantity, and then we have to dispense like new quantity to make up that, for the sufficient amount of medication for that cycle. So I don't know if this is something that has been brought up to you or Andrew, to our committee, and where is this language come from? Because it said it's recommended by SWOG. So.
Not to this extent, but I did remember there was a conversation regarding the packaging of an oral drug that is not necessarily aligned with the administration schedule, i.e. that the way that they package it, there will be leftover drugs per cycle. I don't recall we ever make it into like a policy. And I don't know if this is just the one, but honestly, I don't remember the exact conversation. But there were recommendations that what if we use a different container and just dispense the exact amount as an option? Andrew, do you recall anything that you were engaged in any of this conversation?
No, I don't remember being looped into this. I agree that we should not get in the business of accepting returns and then turning that around and redispensing it to the patient. I wonder if this could be kind of operationalized by having the study coordinator in clinic do the count and then just give the bottle back to the patient right then and there, so that the pharmacy is not really involved.
Right.
I could see that how that could potentially reduce the need for like a new bottle.
Yeah.
You know, but I agree. I don't think we should accept them and then redispense them per se.
Yeah, I agree that that conversation that I just mentioned has to do with not necessarily involving the pharmacy. It's just that the patient bring it back, and the coordinator are just counting the pills as to for compliance, right? Adherence count, and then they know excess amount left, and then they can supplement that for the next cycle. But not, the intent was not to bring it back to the pharmacy for that. So I saw, hold on, let me see. So Joyce, recognizing that we also don't want to have drug wastage, do you think, well, first of all, do you feel that this is an appropriate practice, whether it's pharmacy, it's not pharmacy law or anything pharmacy? Do you feel that this is still a practice that can and still maintain patient safety, I should say? Or anybody else? What does everybody feel? Do you feel that this is a nice for patient safety overall?
This is Renee again.
Yes.
It really sticks out into my mind because it was also a SWOG study. It was several years ago. The S0905 study had a drug that, based on the way it was packaged, it didn't actually list it in the protocol, but upon trying to reorder through PMB, I was told that no, we need to give the remaining tablets back to the patient and then only supplement.
Right.
And that's what we did. I just kind of kept a tracker based on that, said how much I've given the patient, how much I should expect them, if they've been compliant, to have left. And then I would base my new fill off of that. So drug never actually came back to us in IDS. Our coordinators or research nurses would just count for their records to make sure we were where we needed to be in terms of quantity. Right. And then that was given back. And that seemed to work well. It was a little bit more difficult because you kind of have to do some extra planning, but as somebody who doesn't want to waste a ton of drug, it was worth doing that. And that one, like I said, that wasn't even stated in the protocol to give it back. And apparently that was what the PMB wanted done on that one.
Okay. So, so does the coordinator let you know how many pills are left, and then the pharmacy will dispense as much as close to the packaging for the next cycle? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's how we did it. I just kept like a little table. When they were due to come in and how much they got, when the nurse would meet with the patient, they would count, send me a quick message just so we could make sure we were on par with what I thought they should be getting, and not to short them any for their next cycle period. Mm-hmm. That seemed to work out pretty good. Like I said, it wasn't the most convenient thing to do, and when we want to do this on all studies now because it would slow everything down. But that is what we did on that S0905 study in the past.
So I think I see somebody on the chat from Washington State, and I think they are saying the same thing. I think same situation as Joyce in California for us is that they are not allowed to redispense, but what they do is to have the research coordinator or the nurse do the adherence count, and then I presume they probably just order whatever amount is needed for the next cycle to supplement for the remaining, right? for that. How would that work, Joyce? For you?
Yes, so probably for our site, it may not work because our site, the coordinator actually not supposed to count the pills, and especially if it's hazardous. We actually are in the process of sort of changing this patient return policy or process. Because it's a hazardous, a lot of drugs are hazardous, and they don't really have the proper either PPE or area or equipment to handling the hazardous agents. So basically now pharmacy will be counting all the patient returns, and they will not have really any, again, same thing, no proper, area to do this kind of patient count, even though it's supposed to be given back to the patient.
Right.
So I think it definitely will create issue for us. So I think at the end, if we have to do this, it will be pharmacy counted, which it will definitely create problem. However, I mean, with this protocol, seems like they still have recommendations saying that, it can be, we should follow the local guidelines. So we will still follow our guideline. We will not count the pill. We will still go with the full bottle, and if it has to be waste any medication, we will have to waste it. But if some protocol that is mandated, then it will create issue.
So, on Elizabeth DeHazel on the chat mentioned that she completely agree with you, Joyce, but the way that they manage it is from the perspective that if the pharmacist is performing a pill count and return the bottle back to the patient, not relabeling, that's not considered a redispense, or you don't necessarily need to make an entry into the DARF of a dispensing. You may talk about your pill count is how many pills, but not say that you are redistributing those tablets to the patient as a dispensing entry. And that's the way that she handles it at her site.
So why not making sure that we dispense the right number of pills for the cycle? It's possible that some company says you cannot open and count into a dispensing bottle. So at the time that we write the drug monograph, the person who writes should look at that, pay attention towards the bottle size, how much is needed for a cycle. And if there's a big disparity, difference, talk to the drug company about the dispensing the right amount in dispensing bottles.
Yeah, I agree with Rivka. I think if some supplier company that really strict on the about this process, I think the preferred way is to give the site information about repackaging of the drug in terms of what kind of bottle we can use and that kind of information. And then we will rather dispense a more maybe close to precise the cycle length worth of supply, instead of having patient come back and then give us this leftover drug and count it and then give it back to them. So I think that will be probably our preference if we have to handle, manage the drug this way.
So in the past, I remember that the NCI had a list of drugs that you cannot repackage. And in some of the guidance documents for writing monographs, we inserted the link to this list. But in general, most of the time, pharmacy repackage.
Right, Rivka, that is correct. Some of the drug, they do recommend to not repackage, just to make sure that it does not alter the stability of the drug in case it's being placed in an inappropriate container. So that was one of the issue that came up for discussion that from this event that in my vague memory. And I think the other reason why we did the recommendation is not to repackage. Another reason is because as SWOG, remember the sites vary in terms of resource. Some of the sites still do not have a pharmacist. So therefore, a repackaging or even relabeling can be challenging for those sites. And repackaging, the exposure risk is even higher for the person who handle it, right? If they're not done properly. And I think that's another reason why there was a hesitation of making that recommendation, is just because limited resource in many of the community sites. One of my recommendation was that even in some of those community sites, they usually have a more like a larger, they're under a umbrella. So I did recommend also that if there's a need, maybe they can internally make an arrangement to have this drug repackaging centralized if possible, where it can be handled safely and repackage the drug. But still the stability data continues to be something that we need to be mindful of.
Right, so at the time that you write the monograph for a new drug, you can check with the sponsor, with the manufacturer, can we repackage? And then do repackaging if there is a big difference between the drug packaging and what is needed. And I'm not sure how to handle sites that don't have a pharmacy.
Yeah, so that's the reason why this current approach to manage that seems to be more universally friendly, irrelevant of the resource at the site.
So for those who cannot repackage, we will have to endure waste. So at those sites, you dispense the whole bottle and drug will have to be wasted.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Part of the reason also is, I think there was a question raised, is why didn't the sponsor prepare the vial or the container to be more applicable to the protocol? The thing is, sometimes that occurs is because those can be the lot of drugs that was packaged for a different protocol, and those are the leftovers from that protocol, and then they're using it for the current protocol, and that can occur also. And at least that was one of the reasons given to me why they did not package the drug according to appropriately for the protocol. And with that, they definitely don't want to waste the drug if they don't have to also. So I don't know if we are able to come up with a good solution for that, but we certainly can think about that. So Andrew, can we put it on one of our discussion and think about what are some of the options that we can think it through, and maybe so that it will be something that is applicable for all sites, or do we really have a viable alternative to do this? So, so Joyce, if I'm going to, sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to now. For what you have shared with us, let's say if we're not able to change this, and because of the different scenario that this is the way that it will work, just to make sure that it works for all sites in SWOG, how would that impact your site because of the requirement at your site to do that? And I'm not saying that it's not good. Those are great practice, but we do know that there are we do have to, some of the sites occasionally have to deviate from that, and you're weighing out the risk and benefit here. Would that mean that you will have to waste the drug then? Or I mean, what if the the nurse or whoever is counting the pills is counting it at the pharmacy under the hood. Can they would the pharmacy allow them to do that?
I'm sorry, Sylvan, what, can you repeat that?
Can the nurse or the CRA come over to the pharmacy and then handle the pills under the hood? Then it's a protected environment for hazardous exposure risk, right?
No, we won't. Actually, pharmacy, we don't really have a hood to count, because I don't think technically it's not required for the intact tablet. I don't think that based on USP 800, I don't think that we have to really do it under like a khaki or any kind of those containment hood. We still count it over in the counter in the pharmacy, but we will wear gloves and put like a chemo pad, on the counter, and then count the tray and then clean the tray afterward. Okay. It's just like we won't be able to allow the CRA to come in to our pharmacy to count it, and what we will have to do, and actually what we are going to do with patient returns, not this type of patient return, but patient return and then wasted, that kind of patient return, we will be using a pill counting machine and to just count it, and because those are not really going to be reused and redispensed, and that will increase efficiency for our pharmacy and provide the need that they have. But for this, if we have to do this, we'll have to manually count it and then give it back to the patient if we have to. I can't really think of any other way to do it. Unless I have to think it more, but I think if we have to do it, another way maybe when we design the order templates, we may have to sort of calculate each dosing level, how many tablet or capsule they need for that cycle, and then based on the bottle size, and kind of like we'll calculate each cycle how much extra they will have, and then for the subsequent cycle, kind of how many new bottle they should order, that kind of thing, to do all this calculation ahead of time and instruct them to prescribe. So I think it might not be precise of like exactly, because if patient miss a dose, they will have extra pill, but at least it will be close to what they will need per cycle. I think that's kind of something maybe I can think of right now, but I might have to think it more thorough. But I think just like have to count it every cycle and give it back to the patient. It's quite impractical for us, and it might create a lot of like kind of workload and interruption. So I don't think that's an ideal situation.
So sometimes the protocol will require, right, a pill count every cycle also. Sandy on the chat mentioned that SWOG released a suggested dispensing instruction memo from June of 2021. Sandy, can you unmute and provide us some idea of what this memo talk about? Okay, I don't know, because Sandy posts a message and I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the memo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on my laptop, so I've got so many screens open. So this says the purpose of this memorandum is to provide sites with suggested dispensing instructions for AMG 510. AMG 510 is packaged with 120 tablets per bottle. Due to this, participants will receive multiple bottles and will have excess tablets at the end of the 21-day cycle. In an effort to standardize the dispensing process across sites and to help mitigate drug waste and medication errors, SWOG recommends the following dispensing guidelines. Sites should follow best clinical practice for drug dispensing. Sites should document clearly how the drug was dispensed for auditing purposes. Participants should return unused drug in the original bottle and/or empty bottles to the site at each study visit per institutional practice. The sites should follow their local guidelines for pill count and review the patient diary to confirm participant adherence. Study participants may continue taking the excess tablets from the previous 21-day cycle. The sites may provide the counted tablets in the original bottles back to the same participant, and additional unopened bottles should be provided to that study participant to ensure there is enough supply to last until the next study visit. Note, some cycles may require dispensing in 2 unopened bottles in addition to the counted tablets. Note, do not repackage AMG 510. AMG 510 must be stored in the original bottle.
Yeah, okay.
The site should instruct participants to finish the unopened bottle first before opening the next bottle. It is recommended that sites contact the participant caregiver by telephone to confirm dosage adherence between visits. And then it says to refer to protocol.
So first of all, I think this is one of those drugs that the company actually recommend not to repackage. And I think, you know, but at the same token, if you look at the language involved, it's a may. They never say must. So I guess this is built in to recognize that there may be state laws and regulation that will prohibit one type of practice also. So yeah. It's bringing back some memory of a conversation that I mentioned earlier. So I don't know if we can have a universal solution for that, Joyce.
It's okay. I just want to bring it up to the group and just to see what, like, you know, everybody's thought, and then if there anybody encounters some issues or anything, because it's just like it's the first time I've seen sort of that kind of language in our protocol, and since it's recommended by SWOG, and I was thinking that I don't know if I missed any conversation before. So
no, I think this is a unique situation because I think it was raised of why we're getting this kind of packaging that doesn't align with the protocol, and I think the conversation evolved from there, and we find out that we can't repackage the drug. It was not recommended to repackage the drug. So that was the alternative mechanism that we can think of, but you can see that the memo actually provide a broader spectrum of handling to accommodate different sites also. Yeah.
Thank you for the discussion. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you. And I mean, I think it brings up a lot of awareness as well of safe handling. So I thank you, Joyce, for bringing that up. And I think it's a very, very good discussion for us to really think about how we can share good practice as well. And that's part of what the objective of this meeting is. And I thank you all for your participation. I think our time is getting close, and I have to hop on at 10 o'clock. So thank you again. So that concludes our meeting, and I hope to see most of you in Chicago in October, and I hope we will have a true in-person meeting, and I plan on going there in October. So I sure hope to see most of you there. And again, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all the new members, as well as to say sincere thank you to our resident writers for their support. And I hope that it was a great educational opportunities for all of you. And I sure hope that you will think of joining the committee upon your completion of your training also. Thank you all, and have a wonderful Friday, and enjoy your weekend as well. Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.